What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Mash and Drum Whiskey Room. I am Jason C, and today we get to take a look at the latest release from Woodford Reserve. It's the oldest bourbon yet, Woodford Reserve Very Fine Rare Bourbon, as part of the distillery's 2020 Masters Collection. So this beauty right here is a one-time release. It sports a brand new bottle design and has some 17-year-old bourbon included in the bottle. Now, will this sneak into one of my top bourbons of 2020? Is it worth more than double the price of double oaked? Let's find out today on the Mash and Drum. The Woodford Reserve Distillery in Kentucky is known each year for its Masters Collection releases using different mash bills, blends, and also a popular batch proof offering. Now, this was the oat grain release that they did, I think it was last year or the year before. Wasn't a big fan of this one, but if you know Woodford Reserve and the Masters Collections, then you know the shape of this bottle. So for 2020, the newest bottling contains within its blend the oldest Woodford Reserve whiskey released to date. Now, the new Woodford Reserve Masters Collection 2020 Very Fine Rare Bourbon, according to those behind it, includes bourbon from barrels that are 17 years old and date back to 2003, the year the current master distiller Chris Morris was named to that role. Chris Morris and assistant master distiller Elizabeth McCall, it is said, had been holding back the barrels to batch with other barrels for this very special release. So the name Very Fine Rare Bourbon is a nod to the descriptors used by our ancestors to auction highly aged bourbon barrel lots, said Chris Morris in a prepared statement. While Woodford Reserve will always honor the past, this Masters Collection is about the present and the future. So this year's expression is the 16th release of the Masters Collection, which was created to honor the many discoveries and innovations that occurred at the 1812 distillery site where Woodford Reserve is now located. So starting with this expression, all future ones from this series will focus on modern innovation by Chris Morris and Elizabeth McCall. As I showed you before, there's also a new bottle design. The old bottle, which was made to look like an old pot still, has been replaced with the classic and iconic flask-shaped Woodford bottle that they used to have years ago. Assistant Master Distiller Elizabeth McCall said that this Masters Collection has special meaning for her, and for Woodford Reserve, it is the first time her name will appear on the bottle tag since being named Assistant Master Distiller in 2018. So honoring the past and legacy of Chris Morris while looking to the future and innovation. So going forward, Morris will still be involved in the series, but he's stepping back a bit to allow Assistant Master Distiller Elizabeth McCall to take the lead. The Woodford Reserve Masters Collection 2020 Very Fine Rare Bourbon is available now. It's bottled at the Woodford Signature 90.4 proof and priced at around $130 per bottle. Let's taste it. All right, guys, so a few things about the bottle design. I actually really like it. From the pictures, when they first announced the press release, it looked like it was gonna be this tiny little bottle. And it actually is a little bit smaller than I thought, but what I did not expect is how wide it is. It's pretty wide, you know, it's got good depth to it. So from the front, it looks like a small bottle, but once you turn it on its side, it definitely is wider than I thought it would be. You know, I dig the old flask style. I think it looks good. I think there's probably, a small part of me that still loves the older pot still designs. Also, there's a nice big 16 on the front, which could be misleading. So 16 on the bottle just means that this is number 16, the 16th release. Doesn't mean 16 years old. However, the oldest bourbon, as I mentioned, that's apparently in this bottle, is 17 years old. Now, when I say there's 17-year-old bourbon in here, obviously it's not only 17-year-old bourbon. What I think we're gonna have here is something along the lines of what you would expect, with Booker's 30th or even the Little Book series. Bardstown Bourbon Company does a really good job at, you know, blending some older bourbon with some younger bourbon. You kind of want those bright, you know, youthful notes with a younger bourbon, but you also want the older bourbon in there to round out the rough edges of the younger bourbon. So together, they work out really well. So let's see what we get on the nose here. Here we go. This has a beautiful, beautiful nose. This is what you want in a bourbon. This is what I think of when I think of an older bourbon, anything over, you know, 13, 14 years. Beautiful sweet oak tannins. A rich, rich layer of caramel here. There's a lot of chocolate jumping out of the glass too. Some really rich chocolate notes. There's some baked apple notes going on in here. There's definitely like a bit of a cigar note in here, like a tobacco and a smoke that I'm getting. Probably, you know, picking up all that barrel char from, you know, being in there from 17 years. But I think the youthful notes in here are there, you know, from, you know, that baked apple and, you know, apple peel. Usually you'll get those notes on a younger bourbon. So I am getting some fruit notes in here mixed with the rich caramel and oak notes. So far, the nose has got me. I'll admit, I was a little bit skeptical of this one when it came out because it is still that 90.4 proof, you know, that proof point. Most bourbon drinkers today they like the high proof, they like the non-chill filter, they want full flavor, less water in their bourbon. So I get it. I'm one of those as well. But, you know, I think Woodford Reserve has a very specific type of whiskey drinker that likes their stuff at that 90.4 proof. So I have to judge it based on what I'm getting from the proof, not just, you know, what I like from a high proof standpoint. So let's give it a try. Here we go. This is a lot more citrusy and orange on the palate than I was expecting. A lot of orange, still that apple is coming through too. But yeah, the older aged, you know, bourbon notes are there. Getting a little bit more of a peppery finish than I was expecting, you know, especially from a 90.4 proof bourbon. Let's go for another sip. So sometimes, you know, you worry about something being a little bit too drying when it's that old. You get just too much oak and it just kind of dries out your palate. That is not the case here. This is just very sweet. Again, those layers of vanilla and caramel all come together very nicely. The chocolate note, it's like chocolate covered orange peels is what I'm getting here. That apple note is still there. The finish is hanging on longer than I thought it would. It's got a really nice peppery spice to it. This is about my third or fourth pour of this. I was doing some little pours just to get my notes ready for the review. And it's still kind of bringing that little bit of spice to it. So I'm definitely liking that. Let's go for another sip. There's just a beautiful balance here of sweet and spice. You know, you have, and also oak. You know, you have the like I said, those deep, rich oak notes, the caramel, the vanillas, all those great notes that you would expect from a, you know, an older bourbon. But again, we're not sure what the blend was specifically for this. We do know that there's some 17-year-old bourbon in here, but man, the balance of the youthful notes with the older oak notes are really working out nicely here. The citrus, the spice, the chocolate, the oak, the caramel, all coming together. It's not obviously the longest finish you're gonna feel, but it really does have a beautiful little lingering pepperiness to it that I could appreciate. I got, you know, this bourbon surprised me, I will say. It's not a world beater. I wouldn't put this into like a top 10, you know, for 2020, but I think for what you're getting, this is probably one of the more impressive Woodfords that I've ever had. Let's go for another sip. What I do love about this bourbon too is that it's consistent. Each sip kind of gives you that same experience. You get, again, the caramel, the vanillas up front, the little bit of smoke. Mid-palate, those brighter notes come in, the apple, the citrus, the chocolate. Then when it finishes on the back end, you get some more oak, a little bit of that tobacco and smoke shows up on the very back end. And then you have those, you know, those richer, you know, more chocolate notes again that just kind of lingers on. I gotta say, this is a beautifully crafted bourbon. Again, the proof isn't gonna blow you away. It's a very elegant sipper. It's very well crafted. I'm a fan. You know, when it first came out, like I said, and I saw the proof point, 17 years old, 90.4 proof. Like I said, initially I wanted to be like, another 90 proof bourbon from Woodford. But this is actually probably the most interesting, or one of the most interesting 90 proof bourbons I've ever had. So what I want to do is do a comparison to Woodford Double Oaked, which is probably my favorite core range product that they have available on the shelf. This is about $50 to $55. Yes, it's going to be not nearly as old as this, at least most of it that's in the bottle. Again, there's some 17-year-old bourbon in here, but we don't know exactly what the ratio is. And then this is, again, finished for almost a year in another barrel that's toasted to give it that really nice, that double oaked finish. So, which could, make it sometimes feel like it's older than it is. So let's see if this is way better than this, because this is 130. Is this worth more than double the price? A little bit more than double. So let's do a quick comparison. It's an interesting comparison when you go back and forth. The Woodford Double Oaked is just all, marshmallow and, you get some peanut notes in there, but there's also a good amount of chocolate. Where on the nose on this one, this is, you smell like a rick house in this one. When you walk in, the older age barrels, it smells like angel share a little bit. Again, the citrus notes, the apple, a little bit of chocolate. You get chocolate here, but it's different. You definitely smell that it's a little bit younger than what you're getting in here. All right, let's go for the double oaked. Just so sweet and delicious. Again, this is just chocolate, caramel, marshmallow. Vanilla, a lot of vanilla. Little hint of fruit there too. Definitely some oak spice there, but not nearly as much. Now, what's interesting is that the double oaked isn't really giving me a finish at all, whereas this is actually bringing, these are the same proof points, 90.4, the standard for Woodford. This is not giving me really a finish at all. This one, let's see if it still gives me a finish. It does. I am still getting the nice oak tannins, the pepper, the citrus, the chocolate, all on the back end of this. Whereas this is all sweet up front, candy, again, the chocolate, the caramel, the marshmallow. Get a little bit of oak spice in there. It's not really bringing this though is the Master's Collection, or I should say the Very Fine Rare Bourbon, is bringing a lot more flavor and nuance and some depth that I haven't really had in a Woodford Reserve product. So, that's not to say that the double oaked is a bad bourbon. It's completely different than what you're getting in here. I was just curious to do the comparison to see if this is actually that much better. And I could say that this has a lot more depth, a lot more flavor. It's more nuanced. It has some more layers of flavor. I love the combination of the old bourbons mixed with the sweet and the spice, the chocolate, the orange, the apple, all working together. A little bit of that tobacco smoke note as well. Just a beautifully crafted bourbon, whereas the Woodford Reserve Double Oaked is just a little bit more straight ahead of what you're getting. All right, so for the final breakdown, let's talk about price. Price for this is $130 retail. Secondary price, I'm already seeing this for about $200 to $250. Availability on this is not really sure. They didn't really give a bottle count. Woodford Reserve though usually has some pretty good allocation. So usually when they come out with a new bourbon or even something that's even the Masters, the old Masters collection before the new bottle here, you would see their bottles in a good amount of places. So if this sounds interesting to you, I would just keep an eye out. All right, so when it comes to value, I have to look at a few different angles here. You have the fact that there's some 17-year-old bourbon in here. Yes, we don't know how much exactly. Yes, it's mixed with probably some young and mid-aged bourbon as well to craft this blend. And also, I look at proof as well. So 90.4 proof. So to me, when you look at those factors, I would say that it's probably a good value. When you factor in the flavor of it and what you're getting for a 90.4 proof, you got some 17-year-old juice in here, which does not come around often. And it's just beautifully crafted. I think for what you're getting in the bottle, it's actually a pretty damn good value for 130 bucks. All right, so what's the most I would pay for this? I'd probably go up to 150 for this. I really do think that this is a wonderfully crafted bourbon for a 90.4 proof bourbon. There's not many 90 proof bourbons that will hold my attention like this one does. Like I said, the more I sip this, it's just, you know, the finish, the flavors, it's pretty much everything I like in a bourbon. Obviously, it doesn't have the long finish and the long burn like I normally like, but I think there's enough there that makes it, you know, interesting enough for me to pay about $20 over retail for this. So when it comes to a recommendation, I totally went in thinking that this was gonna be a non-recommend, but it actually really is. If you're a Woodford Reserve fan, Woodford Reserve fans are probably some of the most devoted fans of bourbon in the industry. People that love Woodford, they love Woodford, which is probably why you see that, you know, quintessential 90.4 proof in most of their bottlings, because that's what they like. This, however, I think expands it to a wider audience of bourbon drinkers. And it's not because of the proof point, it's because of what's in the bottle and how it's blended and crafted. I think the layers of flavor that it has for a 90 proof bourbon is absolutely delicious. I think if people like I did, if you kind of saw the proof point and kind of scoffed at it, you know, shame on me, shame on you. I really think you're gonna enjoy this. I highly recommend it. If you don't wanna drop 130 on this, try to get a pour somewhere, try to see if one of your friends has it. I think you'll be really impressed for what's in this bottle, given it's only 90.4 proof. And you know, I would love to see more of these kinds of releases from Woodford Reserve in the future. All right, guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this review for the brand new Woodford Reserve Very Fine Rare Bourbon. It's got some 17-year-old bourbon in here. It's the 16th release. Congrats to Woodford Reserve. This is a great blend. Great job to Chris Morris and Elizabeth McCall. Very impressive for a 90 proof bourbon. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button below. Please hit the like button. If you haven't yet, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. Let me know if you've had this yet, what you think of it. And as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. And I just realized this is my last review of 2020, I think. So Happy New Year. Have a safe, happy, and healthy one. Bring on 2021, because I am ready to say goodbye to 2020. So cheers to that. Take care, everybody.